Namaste, and a very warm welcome to all the participants in today's workshop. We have never thought of our lives as a series of stories. In one of the talks I attended, the speaker referred to life stories as the beads we string on a necklace, the necklace being our life. I thought I should share this analogy as it's very appropriate to the talk that we'll be hearing shortly. Before we introduce our speaker and begin the webinar, a little information for those who were not here earlier and have joined us today. Rtambhara Wellness is a collective of like-minded individuals that look at wellness in a holistic way, not just the body, but the mind as well, and all through the practice of knowledge and wisdom that comes from our ancient Indian scriptures and heritage. We conduct corporate programs and retreats for wellness that look at personal transformation, and the details are available on our website, rtambharawellness.com. We also conduct webinars regularly, and our earlier talks are uploaded on YouTube under Rtambhara Wellness. If you'd like to be part of our community, please post your contact details, your cell number, email ID, and we can add you to our groups. So let's get on with today's session and embrace the power of your personal narratives. We have Tanya Bhattacharya, a business storyteller and a story coach at Storywallahs, to take us through this. Thank you, Tanya, for making time to be with us here today. In today's session, we have the talk for 35 to 40 minutes, and it'll be followed by a question and answer, as well as your personal narratives. We'd like to hear from you as well. Feel free to post any questions on the chat function, and Tanya will answer any questions on the power of your personal narratives. A request to all of you to stay muted through the talk and keep your videos on. And now it gives me absolute pleasure to introduce Mrs. Tanya Bhattacharya to you. She's a senior learning and development professional with 17 years of training, delivery, facilitation experience. She works with the Bangalore-based team of renowned storytellers, Storywallahs, as a business storyteller, a data storyteller, and a story coach. Storytelling, indisputably, is the most important skill for leaders today, and storytelling in business isn't about making up tales of false grandeurs, it's truth well told. She facilitates business and data storytelling workshops for professionals across industries and coaches business leaders on how to leverage the art of storytelling to be more inspirational. She also works closely with social sector organizations and founders of startups and helps them tell a better version of their pitch stories. Tanya particularly enjoys coaching women leaders on how to take charge of their career stories and further their personal brands. She couldn't agree more with Ira Glass when she says, great stories happen to those who can tell them. After all, we all have a story to tell. Some of us just struggle to tell it in a way that becomes memorable. So join us to discover how to mine your own life stories and learn how to tell them well. So over to you, Tanya.
Thank you so much, Beena. It's such a delight to be here. And I was reflecting and thinking on the whole concept of wellness, and when you and I connected. So thank you for switching on your cameras. For those who did, thank you, Meera, for switching on that camera. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you, Tanya. I wanted to be, in this anyways. Thank you.
Lovely. So when Beena and I connected and we spoke about wellness and the work that stories do in wellness, I thought it was a fantastic opportunity to reach out to more people and talk about how stories can actually help us heal, and which is why we call the session today Embracing Our Personal Narratives. So when I sat thinking, really, do we have to embrace our personal stories and personal narratives? Obviously, it made me ponderous of, that there are different kinds of people. Some of us, so if I may categorize, so there are 4 kinds of people that I see around me in the world. The first kind, who share their stories with aplomb, and they embrace them and they revel in their stories and they share them with such joy. However, sometimes the stories tend to become too grand and larger than life. And my fear is that when our stories become larger than life is when there's a certain disconnection that happens between who we really are and who we project to the world that we are. So that's the first kind of people. The second kind of people or storytellers that I see around me are the ones who hesitatingly try their hand at telling their personal stories. So what they do is that they have the practiced version of 4 or 5. I want you to imagine that one person that you meet at social do's or at business meetings in your neighborhood, and they tell you the same story every time, and you're just too polite to interrupt and say, you know what, I've heard that one before, and this is probably the 10th time that you're doing it. In fact, I remember a time when my grandfather, because he was restricted to the house, he had a hip injury, he never recovered from it, so his bank of stories and jokes had dwindled quite a bit. And every time I traveled to Lucknow from Delhi, because that's where my grandparents lived, so we would go every summer vacation to Lucknow, and he would tell the same stories and jokes. And I said, Nana ji, you've got to do better. Can you find new stories? And I realized how pitiable it was that he wasn't interacting with new people, so he didn't have a bank of stories to rely on. So I remember the time when I shared many jokes, my own life stories, and suddenly he had these new topics and incidents to talk about, which made him quite popular with those dwindling set of friends who would drop in every now and then. But expanding our own bank of stories helps quite a bit to keep people engaged and entertained and all of that. The third kind of people that I see around me are the ones who don't dare to share. They just have so many things that they want to tell, but they don't know where to begin. Sometimes it's the fear of being judged. What will others say if I share this part of me? How will they see me? What will be their, what notions will I end up challenging? Will they think I'm behaving out of character if I'm sharing a personal story, which may not be acceptable to maybe the current generation? Perhaps Mira's wondering and thinking, can I tell my neighborhood children and youngsters or my own children about things that I did when I was in college? So it could be that too. So sometimes we don't share because we don't know how people will receive our stories. And then the fourth kind of people, very rare, but brilliant storytellers. You listen to what they say and then you never forget, because they just have this amazing, beautiful way of sharing their life experiences, of bringing stories from around the world, and they leave you pondering, with a profound thought, something to lean into. So, well, there are 4 kinds. It doesn't matter which bucket you fit into. The purpose of me being here is that, guess what? Everybody is welcome. You're all here, and I'm so happy you're here. You know what kind you are, first, second, third, or fourth. And if I'm missing any other kind, feel free to put it in the chat window so that I don't go from this session uneducated. Yeah, but largely I see people fit into these. Now, the first question that I want to address is, why is there a need at all for us to embrace our stories of days gone by, of days to come, and what we, all the experiences that we have? This is beautiful quote by Lena Waithe, who's a screenwriter. And she says, I'm writing my story so that others might see fragments of themselves. So the first reason why we must absolutely start sharing our stories right away is because people deserve to see who I am, and I want to be able to leave them with what I bring to the world and add value. So I tragically lost my mother in June last year. In fact, in just a few days, it'll be her first death anniversary. It was very, very hard. I live in Bangalore. My parents were in Delhi. And you can imagine the pandemic, it was at the peak of it, so dad said, you can't travel to Delhi at all, do not take the risk of getting onto that flight. And we had lost my mother to COVID, so of course she tested positive posthumously. Back then we didn't know you needed oxygen, monitoring systems at home, etc. But dad's been feeling very low and lonely, and he's one of those really active kinds. And even though he's retired, he's still working, and he travels quite a bit. In fact, sometimes I joke and I tell my husband that my dad seems to have more energy than you, because my dad would travel like 20 days in a month and still totally fit and fine. And now being restricted at home has been very hard for him, and not having his life partner to share his stories with. So just off late recently, I realized that he was posting a lot of, old, stories of days gone by on WhatsApp, on our family group. And I said, Dad, you're a storyteller. We all know you are. Why don't you just start sharing? So my dad started putting his stories on Facebook. And guess what? Everybody's just loving the stuff that he's writing about. When he grew up, his first salary, what his parents said and did, his moments of awakening, his first job, the peaks and the valleys of his life. And suddenly he realizes that he's so much more connected to people his age, his friends, something that he wasn't able to do very well and keep pace with the Zoom calls, etc. He was struggling with that, but he's suddenly connecting with people. So the first reason why we must share our stories is because we are able to see fragments of ourselves in others when we share, or of experiences that we've had. There are other people who say, oh, guess what, I was in the same city at the same time, or I've had a similar experience. And all the more reason in this day and age for us to connect with each other. So look for connections, think of things which would bind you to others. So that's one reason why we should share stories, for connection. Another quote that I'm deeply inspired by is by Brandon Sanderson, another author. Says, the purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think upon. And I let you, digest that a little bit. The purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think upon. Sometimes we have dialogues with our partners, with our neighbors, with customer service agents, with people at work. And when we have those dialogues, those conversations, they sometimes leave us thinking about something. I'll share one such dialogue that I had with my daughter just before the pandemic started. So she watches a lot of TV. So my daughter is now 8, but she was about 6.5 when I took her to an ophthalmologist for an eye test. So this little girl sat in that chair with these weird, big goggle type glasses, and she had to, of course, the routine. I see a lot of you are wearing glasses here. So, so they were trying different combinations. She sat there reading out the letters on the screen. And I realized that when the screen changed from the first to the second, even the second last line or third last line that she was able to read absolutely correctly the first time around, second time around, she was making errors. She was reading a B as a P and a C as a, D or something else. And I said, what's wrong with you? Your eyesight is absolutely okay. You were able to read the same line the last time around, but you're not able to read it now. And why is that happening? So this cracker of a girl, she turns to me with a sigh and she says, but Mama, it's so boring. It's the same, the letters just don't make sense. If only they were woven into a sentence, it would be so much more entertaining. And that left me thinking. Now, it was just one episode that happened. And I sat there, with a big smile on my face, and I said, my God, my girl is smart. And she's raising that question about, how sometimes when we do tasks which are dumbed down for us, when we actually have more intelligence, and it can be so tiring and boring for us that we start committing errors, which is why automation happens, and which is why the menial tasks that people are doing and they're likely to commit more errors need to be automated. Now, why am I sharing this with you? How does this connect with you? This was nothing. It was just a visit to an ophthalmologist. But it left me with a question. I shared it with the people that I connect with on LinkedIn, maybe on Facebook, Instagram, I can't remember, but I'm very active on LinkedIn, so I shared it there. And the purpose of my sharing that story was not to share very profound gyan with anyone else, but definitely I was attempting to raise the question that for leaders and for managers, think about what are some of the tasks which are menial, and can you change them. Now, it was just an attempt to get them to think. So sometimes the purpose of our story is just to let people think, and we want to leave them with that. So it could be something that happens in your life. Go ahead and see, is this a moment in time today that I can share and recount with someone else tomorrow, to leave them with a thought and encourage a thought. So sometimes our reasons for sharing a story could be just that. I don't know why Parag is sharing his screen. Parag, can I request you to stop sharing your screen so that I can share mine? Okay, thank you. I know technology can be baffling at times. So see if your stories can raise questions for other people. The fourth reason why I think it's very important for us to start embracing our stories and find stories from our life to share with others is because of what Sue Monk Kidd, who's an author, said. Stories have to be told or they die. And when they die, we can't remember who we are or why we are here. It doesn't matter if we are advanced in age and we are 50, 60, or 70, even if we are 20, even if we are 40, 30, whatever age group. Stories serve as fantastic reminders for our own selves as to what is our purpose, what brings us here, and where do we come from. A lot of times when we feel disconnected or we don't know why we're here, and trust me, it's happening so much more. I talk to so many people these days. We're all locked up inside our houses. I live in Bangalore. This is not my home city. It's an adoptive city. So Delhi is home for me. And yet, when I'm here and I think that, if I want to go back to my roots and think about where I come from and why do I do what I do, I always go back to thinking of my past experiences, my parents, where I come from. Think of people that you want to leave your legacy with. Is it your children? Is it people that you work with? Stories also help clarify who we are and why we do what we do. So if we, let's take an example. If I were a stickler for time and absolutely, a pain for other people because I'm such a stickler for time, and I give other people grief if they do not respect time, maybe it would help if I share my past experience of what made me so disciplined and why do I value time so much. I don't come from a defense background, but what if I did and I shared that part of my life where when I was just about barely 10 and I got reprimanded for not turning up for lunch at 1200 hours because I was told 1200 hours sharp and I was 3 minutes late. And every time I was late, I was reprimanded. And it's just in me to expect people to be on time. So this is just who I am. Sometimes sharing that helps people understand where we come from. So it leads to less misunderstanding. So if you are dealing with children, with employees, with neighbors who can't understand why are you the way you are, go back into history and your life and think of those 4 or 5 stories and narratives which would help you clarify why are you the way you are. So that's yet another reason for why you should share your personal stories and how to mine them from your life. The fourth reason and the last reason for why you should embrace your stories and start sharing them is because stories are memory aids. Well, especially when memory starts fading, which it does. I'm touching 40 now, and I already feel like I've lived way too many years. And there's so much of my past that I'm forgetting. I go back in time and I try to look for things that remind me of, of how I grew up and my lightheartedness, the joy that I had. Something that we start missing. We get so preoccupied with work, with responsibilities. Stories also serve as manuals. Manuals that, I think nothing pains people around us more than us telling them, do this and don't do that. Stories have existed from time immemorial. There have been teaching stories. There have been cautionary tales. Red Riding Hood was a cautionary tale. told for the purpose of telling children don't talk to strangers because there are big bad wolves around. We can find teaching stories from our own lives and record them, because if I have committed errors and experienced failures, if I share my failure stories, maybe it'll help someone else make a better decision. And of course, they serve as moral compasses to, what we stand for and what our value system is. Now, these are the 4 reasons for why we should share stories. Now, I'm going to ask you a question and I need your responses in the chat window. So this is like fastest fingers first kind of challenge, and I'm giving prizes here. No, I'm not, but I still want you to respond. Here's my question to you. Where will you find stories from your life? What comes to your mind immediately? At which section of your life? How do you mine stories from your life? What is your understanding so far? And if you're sitting with your arms crossed, Rohan, I need you to put your hands on the chat window and just start typing, Rohan. It's a challenge, personal challenge for you, okay? Good thing you're leaning forward. Now start typing. Parag, you too. I can see responses coming. Oh my God, you guys are really good. So Meera shared that my daughters used to memorize the chart and read them even before the doctor displayed them, then realized that they're getting bored. Oh God, yes, that's a good story. Subhajit says, schooling. Yes, school days. I am sure you remember your school days, and there's so many stories from there. Meera says from your childhood. Bindu says childhood again. It's amazing how a lot of us are thinking about our younger days and when we were more carefree and when we were more free. I think those reminders we definitely need. Bina says our experiences, absolutely, Bina, every day, even now, every day is an experience. I'll talk more about it. Your college life, Yamini says. Sharmi says from school days, childhood. Prem says OD and school days. I wonder what OD is here. I am not really good at acronyms and abbreviations, but university, Satvinder says. Hazel says incident, school days, from second innings career, life experiences. Vijay says, as you get older, all of your stories come rushing back. Absolutely, don't they? Teens, college, childhood, lots. Absolutely. I think younger days. So here's a good tip, okay? And how do you mine your life for stories? Think of yes, college and business experience. Why not, Parag? Absolutely. There's so much there. It's a gold mine of experiences and stories. A quick tip, if you want to look for stories from your life. So if you're sitting in your 70s or your 80s, do a decade-wide section. So Santosh, you might want to look at the, up to 10 years, how many stories do you remember? Then go from 10 to 20, then from 20 to 30, then from 30 to 40, whatever stage of life you were at, and go have a ball looking for those stories. All you have to do is just find 5 of them. Yeah, Santosh, can you do that for me? Would you nod and say yes? Okay, Santosh, that's fine. I put you on a spot there. I just needed a nod kind of thing.
Yes.
So have fun with it. Look for 5 stories, just 5 stories per decade. How old are you, if I'm not embarrassing you in front of?
70.
70, absolutely perfect, because you will have, can you imagine if you look for 5 stories per decade, you'll have 35 stories to tell. And
Yes, certainly.
it'll keep you busy, and it'll keep so many other people busy reading what you have to write about. Yeah, have fun with that.
Yes, true.
Yeah, great.
No
So,
doubt.
Brilliant. I'm so glad you like that idea. So now another tip on, because it's quite possible for Santosh and for others and Vijay, when you're making that line and you're thinking first 10 years of my life, you might be thinking like, what do I write about? Think of your life stages as the most liberating time of my life. The decade of my firsts, every first, my first bike ride, my first vacation, my first salary, my first kiss, my first proposal getting slapped, could be any of those incidents. But think of your firsts. Yeah, you could also go at, if you're going back last 2 or 3 years, my last. Those are beautiful stories. The last vacation I took, the last meal I had with family when everybody came home, and what do you miss about it? There's just so much to tell. And reconnecting with people. If any of you are feeling like you're disconnected away from people, nothing better than opening that WhatsApp, if you are tired or lazy, bum lazy about typing, just record something from, hey, I was just recalling, or I was just remembering when we met in Diwali last year and you had come home bearing gifts and how something happened. And I'm thinking fondly of you. Sometimes even just that revives a connection. Somebody would pick up the phone and call you. So no harm in trying that. That's going back into your past. But what about day zero, which is today? You and I are talking right now at this very moment, Meera. So at this moment in time, when you and I are looking at each other through this screen, what about today? Don't let today go to waste. Discover your life stories every single day. It's just so joyful to sit. Remember the days that we used to do diary entries? I remember the time when I used to write my diary. My God, how embarrassing that was. So if I go back and I look at my diary entries of when I was 14, 13, 12, but it's interesting also that what mattered to me most at that particular stage of my life and on that day, we can do just that starting today. Create your story catalog. Don't let today go to waste, and sit down and think of something that happened today which meant so much to you. Leave this legacy for people. Share it with people, and just put your thoughts and good vibes out there. It'll pay off. And I'm telling you how much joy my father is getting from just being reconnected with people that he broke bread with, people that he worked with. Those groups are asking him, Mr. Mathur, go ahead and keep sending incidents and stories right now, and that connection has been revived. So try that and see if you can connect, because we are going through a pandemic right now, and it would heal others. Stories heal others, and we are not alone. When you share something with me of something that you've experienced today, even if it was a high or a low, it's okay to share your lows. People that you trust, people who are in your community, share your lows, because when we share, we halve our pains and our troubles. So go ahead and just put it out there in the universe. But the big question is, how and in what manner should we share our stories? Yeah, sometimes so we've all heard all kinds of storytellers. So there are those who have, who tell stories, and then we are wondering, when will this end? And then there are those, and we just don't want them to stop because they're so entertaining and interesting to listen to them. Now, what makes that difference between a good storyteller and one who's just telling an anecdote or an episode? Now, what's the difference between a story and a non-story? I'll come to the story bit a little later, but first, let me tell you what's not a story. What's not a story is a series of events. So this happened, and then that happened, and then that happened, and then that happened. That is just a series of events. It's like a bulleted list of one thing following another. One place where we go wrong when we're sharing our stories is that we don't put ourselves inside the story. We are not in the story. We are outside the story, and we are like looking through binoculars and telling people this happened, that happened, and we are not engaged in that story ourselves. Put yourself in the story and share if that was your own life experience. How did you feel when you were, when something unfolded in front of your eyes? What did you think of? And it's okay to in your story keep bringing yourself in and say, I looked at her puzzled, absolutely clueless why she said what she said. Because if you don't share that you were puzzled and clueless, your listeners or your audience wouldn't know how you felt when she said something which didn't make sense, because they don't know the purpose of your telling the story. And another big difference between a story and just an anecdote is that an anecdote is just facts which can bring out laughter. So for example, I was invited to a party, to someone's house, someone who I hate to the core of my being, and I met my life partner there. That's just an anecdote. It's just, can can or cannot. I don't think I was very funny there, but but it's just a very random statement. A story is where you were engaged, because in a story there's a complication and there's a resolution at the end. So whenever you're sharing your life stories, think of what changed. Did you come out of that episode feeling differently, thinking differently, looking at the world differently? Did something change in you when it happened? People are interested in knowing what changed for you when you saw that happen or when you experienced it for yourself. So when you're crafting your stories and thinking, first of all, do not hesitate to go back to the old-fashioned pen and paper. I am still all in favor of pen and paper, and my handwriting's not very good, but I scribble everywhere. I've got papers all over my study table. I'm a complete total believer in put pen to paper or pencil to paper and gather your thoughts and think of what changed for me. So what was the world before this episode happened and what happened after? And it could just be a thought, or maybe something changed in your environment, but think of that and tell your story in that way. And I'm going to pause for a minute now and let you share stories of your own if you're reminded of anything, or ask questions and we can have a chat.
Yes. Can I share a story with you?
Yes, Santosh, I was waiting for it, and I loved it when you sat up straighter. Lots of love to you for doing that. Go ahead.
This is little bit of adventure and little bit of fate. It was about 50 years ago. I was a young lieutenant in the Indian Navy those days. I lived in Bombay, stayed in the beautiful command mess in Kulaba. And we had a sailing club nearby. There is the INS Strata, which has a sailing club. And it has boats which you can take out in the evening, go to the sea, sail, and come back. So I used to go sailing once a week with another lieutenant friend of mine. Now, one day when we went there, we found it was quite windy. Many people came and went back, that is risky. But my partner said, let's go and have a try. So though it was windy, it was not taute, but then it was fairly windy and the waves were rising high. So we took a chance, went ahead. As we went, when you sail in Bombay Harbor, you see the ships, merchant ships coming and going. You have all kinds of merchant shipping traffic. So, we go very close to them. So we went very far. Ships were crossing us. And as the wind gained speed, at a turn, the boat capsized. The boat was upside down. The mast was down. The bottom of the boat was up. And both of us were under the boat. Now, my partner came up, but when I tried to come up, I found that I just couldn't go up. And I realized that my leg was caught in a rope. In a sailing boat, you have those ropes to pull the sail. And as my leg was caught, the boat was like this, and I was cross underneath. One end tied to the rope, the head on the other side. There was just no way I could come up. Now I realized I started kicking my leg that the rope may come off, but it didn't. Now slowly, my breath was getting exhausted. The breath got exhausted, the water started going in. My partner realized that something was wrong. And he also found out that, yes, where I was kicking, there was some rope that was being, pulled. So he also started kicking my leg. No luck. Now, under the water was getting into my body. I was losing consciousness. And I realized this is the end of mine. I reconciled that this is what had to happen. Now, my partner didn't lose hope. He started, pulling the ropes here and there and, disentangling the ropes. Now, and then he kicked my leg. And there it was. My leg got released. I came up. I still remember that from the darkness of, water underneath, as I came up, there was light on the surface. and I realized it's my new birth. I came up, we were very happy. We signaled the sailing club. They came, they told us, it was almost dark. Now, I was saved. It was like a new birth to me. But then my horoscope also says that in those years, I'll have a Jalghat. Jalghat means dying by water. Now, how did the astrologer know that I'll have a Jalghat? I had it. And my horoscope, which was made by some Panditji long ago, looks like an ancient, like those Pandulipis, staring at its edges. And that horoscope still says, I'll have a Jalghat. I wonder how the fate works, how the life and death game goes.
Thank you so much for that precious story. Your story had one job to do, and it did that job, which is to make us care.
Thank you.
Our story has just one job to do, to make other people care. And even though I have never been in a water-related accident, that's primarily because I'm scared of water, so I stay away from it. But I know how it might feel, and I connect with you at that level, Santosh. And thank you for also letting us know that you're a believer. So I know you're a believer in astrology. You just told us something else about us besides the fact
I
that.
was almost dead.
Thank you, Santosh, for sharing that story with us. And I'm so glad you're here amongst us today and you survived that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Bina, do we have someone that we...
I could tell a story if nobody else is. I actually have a very similar story to what Santosh said, because when I was, in my teens, we used to be a huge group in Bombay, a really big group of friends, and we used to go for picnics together. And so one time we went to this place called Silver Beach in Bombay, and it is known to be treacherous. It does have undercurrents and stuff like that. But we, ignored all that because we were all young, and we went into the water, and the tide actually pulled us in. And I remember just kind of trying to stay afloat, just keeping my head over water and just trying to just stay afloat and see whether, we could some fishermen will come or something would happen. And luckily for me, I didn't go in that deep, but I had this other person with me. And, he kept saying, this is it, we're going to die, And I was just thinking to myself, I don't need this guy next to me, But anyhow, somehow we were lucky. The tide pulled us in. The tide usually takes you, and then it has a particular way of coming back to the beach. So we came about maybe, maybe half a kilometer away on the other side. But we actually came out. And a lot of us were pulled in, and a lot of us managed to come out. And my sister took much, much longer to come out, and we were really scared for her. But my brother, it's amazing. He's a great swimmer, but he jumped into the water and he said, it doesn't matter what happens. I'm going to stay with her. If we both die, that's fine. I'm going to be with her. And he stuck with her right through the whole thing. And then she was also pulled out, but she was completely black in the face because, she had been facing the sun and she had been in the water for so long. But that was one day I suddenly, after we came out, I was so grateful that we were all, alive. And the other thing that made me think was that, you really can't mess with, nature. You have to be careful. You have to watch the tides, you have to do all of these things. So that was my one experience when I was maybe about 13, 14 years old. So
Oh, wonderful and so precious, Bina, because there's a power bigger than us. That's the message of your story.
I've also got a story.
Vijay, go ahead.
Yeah, it's again one of those sea type of stories. There's a beach called Elliot's Beach in Madras, in Chennai. And I was with a friend, and he had these new flippers that you put onto your feet, so you get speed, when you swim. So I put those flippers on, and I wanted to test drive that, and I swam quite far out, into the sea, because I went very fast, and I don't usually move that fast. But because of these flippers, I was way out. So I said, "Hey, I'm too far away now." So I turned around and started swimming. Suddenly, something caught me, some current or something caught me. In a flash, I was on the beach on the sand. Just in one flash, I was stunned. I didn't know how I traveled the whole distance in a moment. So that's how treacherous the sea can be, and you're just a little speck, and you're powerless against the power of nature.
But sometimes, thank you, Vijay, for that story. I'm reminded of one where I found power from somewhere. So this is about a time when I was very young. I must have been, what, 11 or 12 years old. We used to play in a park which was right behind our colony, and it had a wall which used to sort of partition the play area where all the swings were from a land, I think, which belonged to so there was what do I call it? So there was it wasn't really a cemetery, but there were two or three, I think, graves there. So everybody, all the kids used to always think you have to be very brave to be able to climb over the wall and go to the other side. And there were this peculiar plant that used to grow there, and we used to call it khatta meeta patta. For people who don't understand Hindi, let me try to say it in English. It's like, bittersweet leaves it used to have. So the task was to go over to the other side, get a handful of those, and come back onto the other side. So this one day I said, I am going to be the brave one, because there was one spot where the wall was crumbling a little bit. So I jumped over that. I got a handful of those leaves for my friends. And then I noticed something move to the left, towards close to my left foot. And I saw it was a snake, and it sat, with in all its glory, just about to bite, I think. I don't know what happened to me and where I got the power, but I literally jumped right up and over that wall. And I don't know where that happened or that energy came from. But I think fear can really propel us to do something. And when we look back, we really don't know how we get out of a situation that seems doomed to us. And I think we can also draw a lot of courage from our past experiences. And it's a good time, especially during the pandemic, to reflect on all the times that we have faced challenges and we've come out of them. And if you and I are sitting here today talking about it, and we can all laugh about it, which means that we are survivors and we will get through this, and we will take other people along with us onto the other side by just giving them courage by sharing our personal stories.
Let me tell you a really funny one, because it started with the glasses for your daughter. When I wrote childhood, because honestly, some of the nicest memories are when you're young. I must have been 8 or 9 years old, and everybody in class had 2 or 3 kids in class got glasses. And I thought that was really fashionable. By the way, they were the ugliest things ever. But I thought, to have glasses was so cool. So I said I couldn't see the board. I had this headache all the time. Finally, naturally, my parents took me to the ophthalmologist. Nice, old, I don't know, all of you have said Bombay. I was also a Bombay girl. There was an old man, Dastur, Dr. Dastur in Flora Fountain. So there I was taken. And sure enough, I was put on this chair with all those things. I felt so pleased, I can't tell you. And I couldn't see anything, not even the big letters. I couldn't see anything. So he said, you really can't see at all? And I said, nope, can't see. So he said, oh dear, we'll have to give you really thick glasses. Was I pleased? Was I pleased? Terrific. Then he sat me down, he took all this off, and he said, young girl, you come back to me telling lies, and you watch what I said, I really can't see and I have a headache. He said, forget it. All I've done is put plain glass, and suddenly every letter was crystal clear. So, the stories and memories of school I still think, are going to be, lived 6.5 decades. But when one is in their up to the age of 15 or 16, you're still naive and
Mhm.
and have fun. So yeah, this glasses story just brought it out and said, now when I have to wear it, I am so
I
miserable.
know.
So
Reflect
miserable.
on that episode again, Bindu. Pause. Stay with this story for tonight. Okay, here's a recommendation for you. Stay with this story and think of what did you learn about yourself in in
Mm.
that episode. So you don't have to answer that right now. Think about it. Put pencil to paper. Write that story down and try sharing it again. Okay, I'll share my email ID. Send that story to me. Record it and send it to me. I would love to see it. Let's see
All
what
right.
we've got in the chat window. Oh my God, it's come alive. So many people typing. Um, Meera says, certainly you have motivated me to start writing my story. Oh, that's nice. I'm so glad, Meera. And trust me, and I think you should definitely share the stories of all the naughtiness that you did, because the kids just can't imagine, what? My grandmother? She did this? The best way to connect with children is to tell them stories of all the wacky things that you did. Do not try to be all, you know, uh,
Nice.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
all goody and nice for them. So you'll connect better when you tell them that you were as naughty as they are. Arjuna says sharing is caring and caring is loving. Joys are doubled again and again. Absolutely, Arjuna, and I couldn't agree more with you. It's just, um, we are able to feel this whole connection. In fact, this has been very therapeutic for me as well to listen to all of your stories. Thank you so much. That was brilliant. And I see Divya says, I wrote a series of stories of Navratri at various parts of my life and posted each one on Facebook. And it was lovely to see how many conversations came out of that. True. And you're so right about that, Divya, because when we share these, kind of stories and we have people connected, and I'm sure that a lot of people must have also told you they didn't know there was a story. And they have been maybe observing Navratris, fasting, doing all of this. But when we seek stories and we share, we enlighten people. And thank you for the joy of sharing and enlightening people. Yeah.
As Tanya, when you said about what did you learn, you asked Bindu. For me, I was 8 years old, and my dad was a forest officer. So we used to live in, big quarters with lots of trees around. And then he used to ride a jeep, and he had a rifle and all that. So I used to be very fascinated with all that. And he used to come with boots. And so one day, I took the jeep, and the driver said his name was Amir Jan, and he says, "Don't do that because Saab will get very angry." I said, "No, no, I can drive. I'll just try." And I went and hit a eucalyptus tree. And then, boy, was I scared. And then when I came home, two things were waiting for me. My dad was a stickler like you. You said the time and also the cleanliness, and he was very strict about behavior. So he kept saying, "What did you do?" I would open my mouth, and the driver said, "Nahi saab, maine kiya." So he didn't give me a chance to explain. But then later, because my dad was very strict and he was very truthful also, I told him, no, it was me who insisted that I drive the Jeep, not him. So that stayed. And then other one was we had one, we used to get male servants, as guards, at home. And one old man was there. His name was Nanjaya. And my mother asked me to call him to take some vegetables. And I called him in Kannada as Nanja Baro Ili. That means, Nanja, come here. So my father heard, and he says, "Please come here." Oh, I knew I was in trouble. So I just went there and stood. He says, he called him also, and he says, "What's his name?" I said, "Nanja." "No, tell me his full name." I kept insisting, but then he got angry. Then that man said, "Please leave her alone." But my dad wouldn't. So then I said, "I'm sorry. I don't know his full name." I lied, okay. Then that man said, "No, my name is Nanjaya." So he says, "How old is he?" "You're only 8 and he is older. Can you not respect?" Okay, call him as Nanjaya and apologize that you called him like that. And I said, "I'm so sorry." And then after that, I have never ever done that to anybody. I've always called them with respect, although I did it with not knowing or not deliberately. But that taught me a lesson that we need to respect, no matter who they are, although they are working for us. So that has remained in my head forever. And I always ask them, what's your full name? And I call them that. That is really a big lesson, that learning that you talked about,
And
Tanya.
Meera, you
Yeah, I learned
just
my lesson. Lying never pays.
No,
Never, ever,
moral
ever.
compasses. Ladies, both of you have just given us stories, and these stories tell us that what became your moral compass, because it's our experiences that teach us, and then we know what you would never do and what you would always do. So thank you for sharing those lessons with us. Lots of love to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tanya, we have time for a couple of stories and then it's nearly 8.
So let me tell you one story.
Okay.
Are you okay with me telling you a story? Okay, but
Absolutely.
I'll tell you a story not just from life, but I'll tell you a story just because I love stories. And this is one which is one of my favorites. I must have told it to thousands of people. And I want to share this with you today. So, this is my parting gift to you. So, I'm going to take you to China with me, to a small village in China. And in this village in China, on top of a hill, there was a monastery. And people had to climb 108 steps to get to that monastery atop that hill. In that monastery lived an 80-year-old Zen master who was so um, who was so intriguing. He was so knowledgeable. He was enlightened. So every morning, the Zen master would meet all the middle-aged and the young monks, and there was a 7-year-old little monk in that monastery, and he would meet them in the huge open foyer. And it was brightly lit, it was beautiful, it was serene, and it was peaceful. And in the morning hour, for about an hour or two, they would all gather and talk about this, that, and the other conflicts of life, confusions about questions that bothered them about existentialism, relationships, and all of those. So while everybody would be engaged in that conversation, this 7-year-old little monk, he was just acting his age. So he would run around here and there. And he was more interested in the cat that would be running around the compound, climbing over the tree and out and jumping out or off that tree onto the other side of the wall. He wanted to run and catch the pigeons who would fly down and come into the compound to eat the seeds that would have been strewn in the morning. He was very interested in trying to catch that little squirrel who would run around and would be looking for a nook or a cranny to put that little nut in, and he would just be running around all the time. So all the other older monks, middle-aged monks, would keep saying, little monk, come here. Little monk, don't do that. Little monk, quiet. Little monk, sit down. Little monk, little monk. And little monk had had enough. He thought to himself, I am a monk and nobody respects me. I have shaved my head and I'm wearing this orange robe. How can they treat me like this and just keep calling out to me, little monk, little monk? I have to make sure that everybody starts respecting me. And the only way I know how to make others respect me is by showing them that I'm as smart, if not smarter, than the Zen master. And if they think I'm an equal to Zen master, then they would respect me. So for days he looked, and pondered about ways to prove it to others. Finally, he had this brain wave of an idea. And the idea was that he would catch hold of a bird and he was going to hide it behind him and ask the Zen master in the morning, well, Zen master, I have a bird in my hands. Do tell, is it dead or alive? And if the Zen master said that the bird were dead, then he would make it fly away. And if the Zen master said that the bird were alive, then he would wring the bird's neck and show them the dead bird. And either way, the Zen master was not going to get the right answer. So he would have proved to everybody that he was smarter. Now, this plan being made, the first thing he did, finished off his tasks for the day, ran down 108 steps, went into the village, found a beautiful white dove, hid it in the folds of his robe, climbed up 108 steps, huffing and puffing, went into his room, shoved the bird under the bed, covered it with a really big sheet, then ran to the kitchen, got 2 little bowls, one with water, one with seeds, put them under the bed, covered it nicely, locked his room for the rest of the evening, and went about doing whatever he had to do. At night, he could barely sleep. He was so restless with excitement. He tossed and he turned, just imagining the faces of all the monks when he would prove to them that he was smarter than the Zen master. Come morning, at daybreak, he was ready, alert, took a bath, wore a fresh robe, and went for the morning lesson. When everybody was gathered in that foyer, talking to each other, and the dialogue had begun very quietly, just like he always did, he slipped away. But this time when he came back with a bird which he had hidden behind him. He took 2 steps back. So he stood against the pillar and he kept standing there with his hands back, and he just wouldn't move a muscle. Now, if it was distracting for everybody to see the little monk running around, this was twice as distracting. They kept looking back and seeing he wasn't moving. Then again, they would look back. What's up with him? The Zen master realized that today the lesson just wouldn't be able to go forward. So the Zen master called out to the little monk and he said, "Well, little monk, you've been standing there for a long while. What is it? Do you have something to say or ask?" So the little monk was waiting for this opportunity, and this is what he did. He took 2 steps forward, put his chin up with as much pride and as much confidence as he could muster. He said, "Well, Zen master, I have a bird in my hands. Do tell, is it dead or alive?" The Zen master just smiled and he looked at him and he wouldn't say anything. So that troubled the little monk quite a little bit more. So he took 2 steps back again, and he was thinking to himself, is the Zen master on to me? Has he figured what I'm doing? Has somebody told him I have a bird? No, I hid it quite well. Well, Zen master, do tell, is it dead or alive? And he swallowed hard. The Zen master looked at him, smiled a bit more, and then he spoke like wise old men do. And he said, "Well, little monk, what's in your hands is in your hands."
Got it. That's
What is in his
something
hand?
that we'll have to think about. Very nice. Thank you so much. And can I call Rohan, please, our Director of Marketing, to thank you officially?
Yes. Stories. Who doesn't love listening to one? We've all grown up enamored by the tales narrated by our elders. It's a binding glue between cousins and friends. But today, Tanya showed us a new way of narrating stories, a story about oneself. It's hard, but no one can do a better job than I to weave a story about myself. But today, with all the stories everyone shared and the importance emphasized by Tanya, I am definitely more confident to start practicing this art. I am sure many of you share a similar experience. Thank you, Tanya, for sharing those pearls from your wisdom of storytelling. It was an interesting session. We would love to have more of this in the future. Thank you, the lovely audience, for sharing personal narratives and enthusiastic participation. Makes it worthwhile for us at Rtambhara family to bring more such interesting sessions for you. Thank you, Tanya, once again. Have a nice weekend, everyone. Take care and stay safe.
Thank you so much. It was a delight.
Thank you all. Just a small announcement about our upcoming programs. We are bringing you a festival of yoga to celebrate International Yoga Day on the 21st of June. On the 3 following Fridays, which is the 11th, the 18th, and the 25th of June, we bring you eminent yoga practitioners who will help expand our knowledge of yoga. Please block your dates, and we will be sharing all the links and all the details of these programs on our WhatsApp groups and through email. On the 11th, we have Shanmukha Shivachandra. He's going to talk to us on Usha Pani Pana Chikitsa, which is warm water therapy for healthier living. On the 18th, we have Anuja Jacob speaking to us on deepening yama to heal with yoga. She'll also take us through a guided meditation for the cleansing of our chakras. On the 25th, we have Mr. Achal Mehra. He'll be talking about Ashtanga, the limbs of yoga. And all of these programs start at 7 p.m. IST. At Rtambhara, we look forward to your presence on select Fridays, where we bring to you interesting topics on holistic wellness and the arts, delivered by a host of distinguished, knowledgeable speakers. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you once again, Tanya, for a very engaging session. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Loved being here. Take care.
Thank
Wish you
you,
wonderful
Priya.
stories.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya.
Sure, Santosh. Thank you so much. God bless you. Take care.
Thank you.
All right.
Enjoyed the session.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you for saying that. Appreciate it. Thank you.